Good morning, everyone. We This morning we have Chris Downey here with us. We've got kind of a couple of cool stories to go over today, but we're going to give it just a couple minutes. We had quite a few people registered to attend this webinar. So we'll make sure that we'll start just a couple minutes late here to make sure that everybody kind of trickles in before we get started. So for those of you that have attended one of our webinars before, usually I really kind of prefer a more of like an interactive session. So greatly encourage everybody here. If you have questions throughout this, we've got an amazing opportunity to have Chris join us today, talk a little bit about his story and some of the things that I think is going to be extremely valuable. So yeah, if you have questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. We've worked with Chris for a while now, so yeah, wealth of knowledge. Yeah, throw your questions in the chat. We'll Lindsay and I will be kind of going over that as well while Chris is speaking, and yeah, we'll get started here. Just one second. There we go. So we got Susanna just jumped in, said thank you so much, Chris, for being here. Dan and I both are at home with a nasty cold, but so glad to have you today. So yeah,
Thank you, Susanna. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying thank you, just saying hello. That's all.
Awesome. So yes, as Susanna said, very, very happy to have Chris here today. Dan and Chris and I have talked a little bit over the past couple of months, and Chris, for those of you that don't know who Chris is an architect. He's been featured on 60 Minutes. He's been using the ViewPlus embossers for I think a really long time, and anyways, has been kind of somebody to I think look up to for some of your accomplishments. I know that a couple months ago, speaking with Chris, he was talking about some of the fun things that he's doing with architecture to kind of make it more of an experience. And I found that absolutely fascinating. So some of the stuff today is kind of going through some of that, but I thought it'd be great to share that with everybody. So anyways, this is Chris. He's got a slideshow here, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We'll get the slideshow going. And 1 second, Chris, and you can go ahead and take it away.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for choosing to join us this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you are. So as Lloyd explained, I am an architect, and I practiced with sight for the first 20 years of my profession, of my career, and preceded by 2 degrees in architecture. So I was deep in the space, deep in the profession, and then in 2008, unexpectedly lost all sight, all light perception, and then went about imagining how to rebuild my career, or what career I might have at that point, in that I had no knowledge of anybody that was an architect that was blind. Didn't know how to approach that, and kind of figured there weren't any books out there on how to be a blind architect. So went on about it, but trying to figure it out. And one thing that gave me confidence in that thinking of continuing in the work is what's at the core of the work that we do, and that's the creative process. And that's not, although people would say, "Oh my God, you're an architect and you lost your sight. It's got to be the worst thing ever." Well, the reality of it is that architecture isn't just visual. That's not the primary thing. The primary thing is the creative process, and that's how you think. That's how you work, how you make connections, explore things. And it's a very thoughtful, intentional practice that, yes, it's traditionally supported by sight, by all the visualizations, but that's not really the core of what we do. So what it really meant is I needed new tools. Yeah, the thinking was there, but I'd lost access to the drawings. And as Lloyd said, I've been using the embossing drawing, the Tiger, the ViewPlus printers, embossers for a long time. So it's been 18 years that I've been working exclusively with the ViewPlus embossers, and that was an absolutely critical thing. And here's I think this is my first embosser, the Tiger Pro, and it as you know, despite the fact that I say it's an intellectual process, it's mental. The currency is the drawing. The currency of the profession is the drawing. So in this case, having the tactile embossed drawings through the ViewPlus printers, that's keeping me into the currency of the work, keeps me connected to it. You cannot rely on words alone to describe the realities of the environment, the site, the building, all sorts of things that go along with it. You could publish a book, read it to describe a building, and then just come up with an interpretation of that. So the drawings are the clarity, and having these embossed prints is really the key and the foundation of how I engage in the profession. So here's a image, and I'm sorry, I don't know if we have people joining us today that are blind themselves or low vision. I'll do my best to describe things as I go. This is just an embossed architectural drawing, and what's interesting is that I'm printing from PDFs of files that other architects draw, that then go from the typical visual format to tactile form through the embosser. And so it makes for a very seamless, very smooth interaction between those architectural teams that I'm working with and the work that I do. So that's having that in a very seamless way that doesn't ask for a lot of extra work by the other architects I'm working with to accommodate. It just makes for a very easy, seamless interface. So that was critical, not just for how I can work with it, but how easy it is for the architects to work with me. So, oh, sorry, and I forgot I was supposed to be telling Lloyd to advance the slides, and so I presume you know we're now just past the image of the embossed drawing, looking at wax sticks as I'm working with the drawing. And so hopefully you caught up to me, Lloyd. I'm sorry about that.
No, we're good.
Okay, good. And so at any rate, the embossed drawing that shows me what what the existing condition is, what the other architects are thinking, and so that was critical, but it doesn't get me into the drawing myself to be able to work with it, and that has been the big challenge, because there's absolutely no interface to engage in a visual within the visual digital realm without sight to know what you're drawing, to know if you're connecting the right things together or whatever it is you're trying to do. the screen today, it doesn't give me any feedback. There are things that are being developed out there that can transcend that to make a refreshable, dynamic display, tactile display screen. That would be great, that I wouldn't have to print every time I want to read a drawing, but we're not there yet, much less that being a dynamic interface that could be both an input and output device. Much less, what does exist out there today in that space is very low resolution and at a small scale, a scale that's insufficient to support the scale of drawings for architectural drawings. So I really rely on the embossed drawings to get there, and then develop the process of working with wax sticks to sketch on top of it. Really very similar to what I used to do when I was sighted, of rolling out a piece of trace paper on top of a print to be able to sketch on top. In this case, I'm not rolling out any sketch paper. I'm just taking the wax and working directly on top of the embossed drawing. And with that, I can feel what the original drawing is, and then what the sketch I'm working on. And it's still sort of happy, largely in my mind, but I'm able to test relationships and make sure everything's connecting properly. And then from that, I can have conversations with other architects or the client to discuss that strategy, that approach to whatever it is, and or have other architects on the team draw it up so that we can continue sort of the iterative process of design as an architect. So next slide. And this is a sort of an example of how I work with these. In this case, I didn't necessarily start off with the design concept. I was taking a concept from the architects I was working with. This is for a project in Vancouver, Washington State, for the Washington State School for the Blind. And this is on the second floor of the space, the Life Skills Training Center. And the second floor houses the Department of Blind Services for the state of Washington. And this was a space that was to be used by people from the community that were experiencing sight loss and coming to this center for training. And it also had a direct connection with the Washington State School for the Blind. But in reviewing this initial layout of reception area is designed by the architects, I quickly realized that they were designing with their eyes, as we're kind of trained to do. And in looking at it, I realized that without sight, it would be very difficult to get from the elevator or the top of the stairs to the reception desk without that person calling out. But even if they did call out, you'd have to get around furniture, all sorts of stuff. You could not make a straight line, although it was very logical sighted. So it's what I have come to refer to as ocular-centric design or visually biased design. And it's whether it's intentional or most likely subconscious, it's just biasing sight to be able to navigate and use the space. And ironically, in a space like that, this is a space where you want to set their users, their clients, you want to set them up for success. You don't want to set them up for frustration for just showing up. So it was important in this case for me to sort of analyze what they thought the trajectory was, how it would work, and then to demonstrate how the blind mobility experience would actually work. So it was a sort of, this is what you want. This is the sort of blind truth reality of how that was going to actually happen. And with that, it then set up the opportunity to go through a whole series of things to explore different options, ways of just working with what they had to improve it, and then moving away from it in the next slide for something that created a more blind and visually impaired mobility-centered design strategy that provided textures in the ground planes, like a carpeted seating area off to the side, so that if you came up out of the elevator or came up the stairs, you could follow the hard surface. If you then hit the edge, you could shoreline. If you're a cane user, you could shoreline along that edge to lead you right to the receptionist. So yeah, you may not know that the first time you come, but henceforth, it's a reasonably easy strategy to follow to have that movement, and you're not having to go around other pieces of furniture, sitting areas, and things like that. So it involves sort of relocating things, moving the reception desk to a more directly accessible spot, and putting it on the main flow of how you would be moving through the space. So whether you're coming or going. So anyway, it was just showing both how I work, working with embossed drawings together with the wax sticks, but also how that plays into how I engage with teams or the services I provide, in this case, more of a response condition to sort of the design proposition from the team. So next slide. So all of that, it's interesting. We often think about in disability space about accessibility, and that's typically about access within the architecture itself or the site. In this case, it's about creating accessibility within the process of design, and it's accessibility not only for me so that I can work in the profession, but now I typically am working with on projects that are specifically serving the blind and visually impaired or the broader disability community, or in this case, working with a client that was blind herself. And she was the executive director of a nonprofit that I was the architect for. In the drawings that I worked with, the drawings I was printing through the ViewPlus printer, at the time, the Tiger Pro, and then sketching on with wax sticks, all of that was immediately accessible to her, giving her agency, giving her control as the lead client in the production of her space, so that she no longer had to rely on her sighted employees or sighted staff for them to describe it, or to have more clumsy, well-intentioned but not necessarily quick and easy to access sort of creative works to try to explain what was going on. So it really streamlined the process and really enables the person, a client who's blind, or a user or a stakeholder, to really be centered and give them agency over the work that they're doing. So, next slide. And so with this is I wanted to sort of transition into some of the other technologies that I pull into play in the work that I do. And it's things that aren't necessarily specific to the embossed drawings, but it's very critical in the work that I do. In this case, this is a software system that was developed out of the University of Minnesota Low Vision Lab, and it was a visualization tool to take architectural renderings and three-dimensional models or photographs, to take it from being seen in 20/20 vision to simulate different visual acuities. And it was really important, and something I quickly realized in the work that I was doing. And as for those familiar with the population of the blind and visually impaired, my situation of having no sight, no light perception, that's generally considered to be about 8% of the legally blind community. Most have some sight. So the visual world design becomes very important. And I know that as most architects don't really think about that, how you can design visually to maximize visual acuity, or if you're not careful, how to make your space less visually accessible and effectively blinding people that might be using your space based on how you design it visually. So I think this is just a description of things that are going to be happening in the next series of slides. And I don't want to get too caught up in the details of it. I just want to show sort of the analytical tool of using this filtering system that automatically identifies points of concern, rates them, and provides feedback that the lighting designer or architects can work with to increase the visual accessibility of space. So next slide. So this is looking at some stairs in a historic building. This is for the Indiana School for the Deaf and School for the Blind, a project I'm currently involved with in Indianapolis. So this is really just looking at the stairs and trying to make the stairs more visually accessible. Just taking this as a demonstration of how that works. And let's just keep going. Next slide. And then they're sort of showing how you could use a nosing, high contrast nosing strip to make the stairs more visible, especially on the descent going down. That's more of an issue than going up, and really trying to make those edges far more visible and therefore more safe, and also reducing anxiety as people, especially those that are low vision conditions, to have more confidence and comfort as they're using the stairs. Next slide. And in this case, they're really identifying the top 3 steps as the most critical, or the 3 in front of you as you're moving as being the most critical for low vision, for that confidence in your next step. So next slide. This is another similar type of software or digital space design. This is the Arup Sound Lab, a photograph of that space. And I was connected with them very early in my work in Architecture Without Sight, in that I was very curious about how to design more intentionally in sound. Without sight, you really rely on sound to be able to hear the environment around you, to plot strategies for mobility to move through it, but also for the quality of the experience within that space. So the acoustics becomes far more intentional than it does in the typical sighted experience, and was really curious how to be more intentional about that in the design work. And unfortunately, in typical drawings, we don't really have good systems for drawing sound. It relies primarily on mathematic scientific calculations that take into all sorts of things for consideration. And you're really dependent on the acoustician to give you that data and to make decisions based on that. You can't hear it, you don't see it, you just get the numbers. And then you get to explain it to a client how that was working, whether or not it was going to suit their needs. And in a case where it was less about preventing sound from traveling through a wall from one space to another, or from a mechanical unit into the inhabited space. This is really about hearing the space. So it's even a very different kind of thing. And there was no number that was going to communicate that to me or a client or a blind user. What's wonderful about the Sound Lab is you can, as you work with them, they model it, and they have proprietary systems, and they model the sound of architecture while it's still in digital space. So they take the architectural drawings and robust 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional models to accurately reflect the architecture. It's typically done for visual means, but then they use it to digitally impose sounds within that space. And you go into their sound lab and you can actually hear how that space will sound. So they did that for work on concert halls, music halls, things like that. When we met, I gave them the challenge of, could I hear a king tapping in the space? Could we hear the shape of the space, the proportions, the direction of the space? And they're like, yeah, we can do that. I said, okay, can you sort of animate it as you would walk through the space, tapping your cane so you're hearing it, so you can hear how that sound hits the surfaces of walls and ceilings and comes back to your ears, so you can really sort of understand sort of the process of sound and echolocation as you're moving through the space. So we had to work on that one, but we eventually got there. And the first time we had a chance, next slide, to work on that was for a project for the Lighthouse for the Blind and Visually Impaired, in which we did an awful lot of modeling, acoustic modeling, and spending a lot of time with the client, with the users in the sound lab, hearing the space, both for some of the typical things, even something like from a multi-purpose space or the boardroom on the north side of the building overlooking Market Street in downtown San Francisco. Interestingly, the client, the executive director at the Lighthouse, didn't want to be disturbed by the sounds outside, but he did want to be disconnected from the city. If you can't see out the window to see City Hall or to see Market Street down below, you kind of want to hear its presence. You want to hear the streetcars going by, buses, even the occasional siren. So trying to get to a point of some acoustic connection, but no disturbance, no real disruption of that sound within the space, so that without sight, you could still be connected to the city beyond. So that was one unusual, unique strategy. The other was really just to hear the space as you're moving through it. So this, I'm going to play a sample of the sound as I'm coming off the elevator into the elevator lobby, into the main reception area, greeted by a receptionist, and then moving through the space. And this first iteration will be in a very raw state, raw acoustic state, where we didn't model much in the way of acoustic materials. So it's dealing with more typical, just hard surfaces, and we'll hear how that sounds. And in particular, listen to the receptionist, his voice, and others around. But I must say that this is intended to be heard in the sound lab, which is ambitronic, which basically means you've got sound coming from all around. So it's three-dimensional, and so it's spatialized, so you can hear where sounds are coming from, much as you would as you're walking through the space. That's not going to be the case as we play this sample, but at least when I compare the two, maybe you can get a sense of the difference of the quality of that sound. So this first one is the raw acoustic condition, so let's advance. Oh.
Good morning. Welcome to the Lighthouse.
Okay, so that was in the sort of raw condition. And the next slide will model what I'll refer to as the preferred condition, what we actually built to. So let's again focus in on the voice of the receptionist, and also the sound. I think you can really hear it when you come out of the elevator lobby and you open up into the reception area. You can hear how the sound changes into the reception area, where there's a lot more acoustic treatment and really sort of improves the sound of space, reduces the amount of reverberation, and increases speech intelligibility as you hear the receptionist and others chatting. So let's advance. You playing that, Lloyd?
Yeah, I went to the next one. Hold on.
Yeah, there we go.
Good morning. Welcome to the Lighthouse.
So that's an example of how that works. And again, it's not optimized in the acoustic environment you're getting to hear, but it gives you some idea of what that work is and how it becomes a tool that sort of invites others into it. So that if the acoustic numbers don't mean anything to you, you can actually hear it. And we work towards delivering that acoustic experience. And it's all based on the real materials, the real shape of the architectural space, and point sounds put within it so that you can hear how it would work within the space, including the tapping of the cane. So next. So here I'm just going to quickly run through sort of a range of projects. Through all of this, most of the work that I do is specific to the blind and visually impaired experience. It's either schools, agencies serving the blind, or in this case, eye centers and eye institute. This is the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center in Pittsburgh, and it's a new 9-story ophthalmology center and research facility. And so anyway, let's just take a few looks at that. And my work there is really about the blind and low vision patient experience coming and going through this building. So next slide. And then if I went through it pretty quickly. Now on the Salesforce Transit Center in San Francisco, the Transbay Transit Center, and that's something I really had the daunting pleasure of working on. It's a 4-block long, city block long transit facilities. And in this next slide, there's a photo of the bus deck on the 3rd floor with buses that serve on either side of this central platform. This platform being 4 blocks long. Luckily, I had the Tiger Pro, ViewPlus Tiger Pro printer, which takes roll feeds. So I have had some drawings that were 16 inches wide printed. That's the largest we can run through that. But it can go for infinite lengths. I had some drawings that were 16 inches wide by 240 inches long, so that I could get the entire continuous experience of what it would be like to move along that center loaded bus platform. So that was a really critical element to have that kind of document to work with. Next slide is a pavilion that I was involved with for the World Expo in Dubai, which was for 2020. Thanks to COVID, it became 2021. In this case, it was one of the primary thematic pavilions of that expo, and it was all about sustainability. And not that it was within my scope. My scope was all about the universal design experience for people of all types to move through this pavilion. It's really a museum that's about sustainability, and itself is a building that is net zero in the desert. The next slide. And some of the interior spaces that I got to understand by reviewing the tactile drawings and engaging with the team that was designing this facility and bringing in sort of different experiences they weren't necessarily anticipating, trying to get a more equitable experience for all users. The next slide. So this is the lighthouse for the blind and visually impaired. This is actually the space. This next slide was the space that you heard, the reception area, showing how that space works, designed for those with low vision, but also no sight. Some key things to point out is that all the primary circulation spaces were hard surfaces so that you can hear footfalls, cane taps, dog paws. You can hear all that as you're moving around. You can know where people are as you're approaching, rather than having those spaces be on soft surfaces. So it really sort of gives acoustic awareness to others around you and gives you something to work with as you're trying to hear the space, so that you can tap your cane to hear how it's engaging in the space around you. But there are other things that are happening here, but I'll, in the interest of time, I'll just move on to the next slide. This next photograph is a photo of a stair that we put into this facility. The lighthouse is located on the top 3 floors of an 11-story building on Market Street in San Francisco. And as a community center, as an organization that's serving people, we wanted to be connected internally, not to have to change floors by going to the building common elevator to change floors or going through the exit stairs to change floors. Really wanted to build a sense of community, and it was an expensive proposition, but by cutting in through the floor slabs, inserted some new open stairs to link the 3 floors together at the center of the space. Very critical for that sense of community and connection. And going back to and thinking about the slide last up of the reception area, really fond of the idea that if you come in from the elevator lobby, which is sort of opposite where these stairs are, if you're sighted, you can see that there's stairs ahead. If you're blind, you might be able to hear people going up and down the stairs. You might hear cane taps on the stairs. The stairs are designed in wood. The treads are wood so that you can hear, have a good quality sound as canes and footballs hit it, as opposed to metal. And so that adds to the sort of the sound of the sonification of the space and giving more awareness, making it a more inclusive multisensory space. But then when it came to making it visible, dealing with effective color contrast and visual accessibility, put in stainless steel nosing strips on each tread so that those with low vision conditions would be able to better see the steps in front of them. So next slide. And then on that stair, we designed a custom handrail to go on that stair. And it's one thing I was really thinking about. We already mentioned it about how we typically think about accessibility in architectural space. It's more about sort of, getting around the functionality of space. As an architect that was blind, I was also curious about accessibility to the beauty or delight in the space. That as architects, we design spaces to be delightful, to be enjoyable. That's what we aspire to. Hopefully that's what we all get to. And I was curious about how to share that sense of care, that sense of generosity when you can't see. So some of it comes through the acoustics, the materiality. And in this case, it was about when you engage with it through the sense of touch. You grab the handrail and all of a sudden it doesn't feel like the usual handrail. It's very comfortable. Your hand slides on it very easily, and it just sort of intended to be sort of a surprising grip, something I always describe as the handshake of the building. So next slide. And then moving on to, I think I mentioned this earlier, this is where that visual simulation of the stairs that happens at this project, the Indiana School for the Deaf and School for the Blind. It's a co-location project, bringing the 2 schools together on the side of the existing School for the Blind, retaining 3 historic buildings, but then providing new construction for everything else, short of an auditorium, an existing auditorium that's not historical. It doesn't work very well as an auditorium, so it's being converted into a dining hall. Everything else is new: residential halls, education buildings, all sorts of things, all services, bus approach, vehicular approach, separating the 2. They have 62 buses that come here each day. So separating that flow of traffic from families and others dropping off kids that live more locally. So making sense of all that, and also providing a lot of athletic fields, especially for the School for the Deaf, which has a huge football, baseball, all sorts of exterior sport facilities, and other gymnasium facilities as well. I'm the blind design advisor, working together with a gentleman by the name of John Dickinson, who's a deaf architect and grew up going to schools for the deaf and is very deep in that space, and a specialist in deaf space design, and much of the work here was about making sense of the different needs of the deaf and the blind student population. Not that it's always different. Sometimes they're in conflict. Most of the time, they're somewhat compatible, but it's our job to sort of navigate, help the architects navigate through that to make it work for both populations. So next slide. And this is the project I mentioned in Vancouver, Washington, the Washington State School for the Blind Life Skills Training Center. That's involving a residential program for students that have graduated and then about to head off to their careers, school, or whatever it is they're doing, but they don't necessarily have the independent living skills they need. So this is a residential facility for those students. They're not taking classes here other than classes in life, classes in independence, taking care of themselves, coming and going to jobs, to a local community college or whatever else is there, sort of honing their skills under supervision, under guidance to develop that. So this is the front door, designing with that to make it audible and making a break in the building. It's things that can sort of call out that space, but also changing the concrete path that approaches the front door, changing the color and its texture to identify it as you're coming up the sidewalk. So I'll just go through a couple quick slides. This is a bench and wood slat at the entry. I don't want to spend too much time here. Next slide. And a photograph of the kitchen, trying to create a space that is good for independence. There are two working spaces side by side. There's, I don't know if you can see it, there's a cane notch so you can rest your cane in the side of the countertop at the end so it's out of the way, but also good visibility for the staff if they're assisting you, giving you any pointers, but also creating a social space so that could be others sitting at the counter facing into the kitchen and having a conversation, or you just make your own breakfast, make your lunch, go around to the other side and sit and eat there, but really trying to create a space for learning, but also a space for community for those residents to share in their experiences, just share in life in general. Next slide. Another school project, this is on the next slide, was the UC Berkeley campus. And in this case, I was pulled in to work with the landscape architects and campus planners developing a master plan for the ADA transition of the entire campus of UC Berkeley, their main campus. And we're dealing with a list of 47,000 site accessibility infractions, shortfalls, things that are shy of code compliance, and developing a master plan over the entire campus of how to do that, and taking the advantage of the opportunity to solve really challenging natural topographic challenges that sort of defy accessibility, getting almost all of it, all the main pedestrian paths, to a gentle slope that's not even considered a ramp to be able to move across the entire campus. There are just maybe two places that we couldn't achieve that at that gentle slope. So anyway, what was interesting about this was dealing with a campus of that size through embossed drawings. We were taking it neighborhood by neighborhood, moving around through the space, but also having to deal with the overall and coming up with the tactile graphics for me to be engaged and be part of that process. And the next slide is of another project at UC Berkeley, and this is for a new home for the disabled students program to occupy an existing historic building on campus. It opened up in April, about a year ago, and it's a really challenging project. I don't want to go into too detail, but it's all built now and serving well. So next. And something that's a little different, and like that last project though of the disabled students program at UC Berkeley, which dealt with all disabilities, this next project for Microsoft is the same. In that case, it's all about dealing with the diversity of the Microsoft employees, especially at their Redmond campus. And this is a prototype project for developing an exterior signage system to be inclusive of the broad difference of all their employees, giving them a feeling included, having them be empowered, and giving them the tools on a campus through their ability to create their own pattern language to really develop a system that could work for all through signage on campus. So we'll just look at some of the prototype development. Next slide. And some of the elements you developed in this case. There's a map kiosk that's both visual and tactile in an exterior condition, having to deal with all sorts of challenging things of having it be on a slope so it doesn't collect trash and leaves and things, not facing the sun and being hot, burn your fingers, but you could also see it. So it's not an easy thing to do. And this prototype is being rolled out across the campus, and they continue to sort of iteratively improve on it as they go. And part of the thing was addressing the broad needs, different needs, but also avoiding conflicts between the different needs. So a bit of a transition here, going from the typical architectural services that I provide and the tools that I use and how I approach it, into taking it into the classroom. In this case, given the opportunity to teach an architecture studio at UC Berkeley Department of Architecture, a project, a studio for a semester for graduate students in architecture. I don't know, I'm guessing this is the first time an architectural studio with an architectural program in the US, if not, at least in the US, to ever be taught by a professor that's blind. And the school purchased one of the ViewPlus printers for the students to have and use to be able to print drawings to share with me so I could review their work and be immediately engaged with that. So, and one of the first things I had the students do is similar to the Lighthouse Handrail project, was to take the idea of intimacy in architecture and the sensory experience and what's immediate to the body, is developing more finite pieces of that you could be more intentional about. So each student designed a handrail for a particular location in San Francisco, and in this case, they were doing drawings for it. They would send it to the embossing printer. I could review it, but quickly they transitioned to working with 3D printers, because it's not, in a case like this, it's not what the handrail looks like in a drawing. It's all about how it fits the hand. And in the same sense of that handrail for the lighthouse, it was about instilling that sense of joy, of beauty, of grace in how the handrail fits the grip of your hand. And in this case, also how the brackets hold it off a wall, that it's important how the fingers engage with that, and to design those brackets that support it to be sort of anticipate that it's predictable accidental engagement with those brackets, so that it's comfortable, that it's not going up against sharp edges, and making it just a much more pleasant experience. So it's one of the students, a lot of them thought it was one of the most engaging projects they had it in the school thus far. From there, it was about designing, then the next slide, about designing a different enclosures over a open stair down into the BART stations, the subway system along Market Street in San Francisco. And it's a condition where these kind of entries that don't have a covering, it's just an open stairwell, it's really hard to hear where those stairs are, to be able to find it in space along Market Street. So the idea was to have the students design a covering, a canopy over the stair to make it something you could hear on approach, and using the idea of sound and sculpting that sound to affect the shape of the form of that canopy, of that surround, the elements that surround that. Yeah. So then the next thing was doing the same thing, but then also inserting different things. In this case, it's inserting different things that can add to sound as the trains come and go, or there's a breeze going down Market Street, that it would affect the elements, things similar to wind chimes and stuff like that in a more architectural form in the space. So with that, I just want to point out that through working with the embossing printers, which are really sort of what really keeps me connected into, as I said before, the currency of the profession. It's all about what enables me to provide that unique value into the profession of architecture and the design of our environments in ways that few others have that experience to bring to the work. So this is a photograph of a commemorative Louis Braille coin, and I sort of take that as sort of the symbol of unique value in that tactile world of a different experience for those that don't have sight or have imperfect sight and engaging in the environment around. So anyway, that's it. And we can move on to some questions and discussion.
So Chris, while you were presenting, we did have a couple comments that came in. Susan had mentioned, I really like the handrail, and also fantastic use of sound with the acoustic sound that you were talking about through the stairways. So,
well, thank you.
We do have a couple minutes left. And yeah, we have a couple minutes left here. So let's see, we just had one comment come in from Susanna. The gardeners have talked about you over the years, but I'm just blown away at your achievements and perseverance. What an honor to have you with us today. I know Dr. Gardner, the task of learning Braille at close to 50, being a physics professor, was something he was not so excited about. That's the beginning of ViewPlus. How long did it take you to realize that you needed to learn Braille in order to continue your path? And how long did it take? Thank you again so much.
Thank you. Well, the process of learning Braille in terms of fluency is an ongoing process. I didn't study it immediately. I was in my rehabilitation. It was all done as sort of a job retention rehabilitation program. Did it at home with services I needed, and it was all about getting me out independently, getting to the office. So orientation mobility was key. The technology was key. All that was really important. But it was actually when within, I'd say, 6 months, I was set up with the Tiger Pro embossing printer, and working with my blind adaptive technology trainer, a guy who's been blind since birth. We printed a PDF of a plan of a project I was working on before I lost my sight, right before I lost my sight. And it was a plan that I knew well. We printed it out on the Tiger Pro, set it on the table, and I was like, what's going on here? I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And then my trainer has been blind since birth, had never seen a drawing. He was all over the thing, asking me like these great detailed questions and all this stuff. I was like, it made me realize that, I hadn't started studying Braille. I hadn't developed that neurological connection between my fingertips and my brain to be able to effectively understand that signal and to make sense of it and to organize that in my mind. So that was my first indication. Thanks to the embossed drawing, I need Braille. If nothing else, it was about developing that capacity to read at least a tactile drawing, but in focusing on Braille, getting that tactile literacy, but also learning Braille itself. And now, yeah, we print Braille as part of the drawings. that I work with. I'll note it up myself, at least labeling. So on the sheets that I print out, I'll label it in Braille. I use it when I'm out and about through buildings. I don't sit and read books. I'm not that good. Always say I'm never going to sit down and read War and Peace. It would take the rest of my life, and I would probably die with it unfinished. So I take it as a very critical. So it's a very critical tool, and I think it's something that's underappreciated, but it's really challenging. The older you get, to be able to rewire the brain to maximize that, and also have the strategy to push through with that, to spend the time. Part of it is I just didn't spend the time. They say you need to spend at least an hour a day reading Braille as you're learning it to get fluent, to develop any reasonable level of fluency. I just never took that kind of time. I went right back to work within a month of losing my sight. And so I was all about keeping my job, keeping things going, and putting the focus there. So it was somewhat of a strategy on my point. Decision came at the expense of Braille fluency, but I think overall it served me reasonably well.
Well, and so Suzanne also followed up. So thank you again. Maybe you can help design a ViewPlus blueprint machine. And Susan Osterhaus said, "Do you use Nemeth or UEB math?"
I don't. I need to use either in my work. When I typically if I'm dealing with numbers, I'm in digital space, in Excel spaces or text, and it's all digital in how I engage with it. So I haven't, had I been blind as a kid going through school, or if I was in a more scientific space, I would most certainly pursue those, but I haven't found it to be that critical in the work that I do.
Let's see, we have Rebecca says, "Thank you, very interesting. What would you like to say to students who are looking to pursue a career while having an impairment, may it be visual or based on your own experiences?"
Yeah, great question. And it makes me realize that I skipped over the last image in the slide deck, which is a photograph of a student I was working with at the Virginia Tech School of Architecture Blind Design Workshop, a program they run every year, every spring for a week for students from the state of Virginia, high school students that are blind or visually impaired. And they spend this time on the Virginia Tech campus in Blacksburg, learning about design, about architecture, and having that kind of experience, not necessarily to direct people that are blind, students that are blind, into the career, but to open up the suggestion, the possibility, and especially within a school that is very supportive of that notion. Which reminds me of another school I did a similar thing with in England, the Bartlett School of Architecture in London, and the dean there, he was curious about not only how to make the profession accessible to students that might be blind or low vision, but in his mind, more importantly, what they, as an institution of the learning of architecture, have been missing by having no students that were blind or visually impaired. He saw that as a gap in their awareness, in their knowledge, and had no understanding of how people that are blind or visually impaired would use their space. So it was, I thought, a really profound admission on their part to really consider not just what they can do to make it accessible, but what they could access into other different experiences as they think about how to design more effective, inclusive architecture. So there's a lot that's happening in that space. I've mentored a number of students that are low vision, including one that graduated from the Harvard School of Design, got her master's in architecture, who's low vision. One that's a student now at the University of Virginia that is low vision. and another that just started this spring getting his master's at the Yale School of Architecture. And then there's others, another young student just starting his career at the student in architecture at the University of Oregon. And so anyway, not that there's a whole new rage of falling in love in architects, but it's what I've come to expect to recognize the unique value that we have to bring to the profession, not only in the work that we do, but in the dialogues we have within the profession. And yeah, the ViewPlus, the having quick access to embossing printers is so key to getting it. The being able to do that work. Many of these students that I've been mentoring, they have enough sight to rely on what they see on the screen. It's been my impression they'd probably be better off also using tactile drawings as well to be able to sort of put things together instead of just visualizing through magnification areas. So I think the two of those can work together even for those with low vision conditions.
And I think that's important so much that you can communicate with just text. So
yeah,
you mentioned the drawings and how it takes so much to be able to explain those. We've been working with creating patterns for colors and stuff like that to be able to communicate some of that stuff in drawings. So part of it can really help communicate different things like pathways for main traffic. So yeah, fascinating stuff. Let's see, we have one more comment. Can't hear it. So yeah, I think this type of stuff is very important to have these conversations. So
yeah,
lots of thank yous coming in from the chat now. So
oh, and I want to send out a very sincere thank you to all of you at ViewPlus for this such critical tool for being able to work in the profession and stay engaged, and to it's through these drawings that I can really sort of bring that unique value. I don't think it is anything inspirational or that special, just doing what I do with the new tools that I need. So I'm grateful to have those tools, and thanks for everybody that was able to join in today.
Yeah, thank you. Perfect. Well, yeah, thank you, everybody. Thank you too, Chris.
Okay. Thank you, Lloyd.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everybody.